to the back, ayy. Got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast, ayy, ayy. Let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss, ayy.
This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Monday, everybody. Post Super Bowl Monday. I'm not even going to get into it. I'm not a Chiefs fan at all, but there's just something about Philly fans that I just do not jive with at the end of the day. But nonetheless, congratulations to all of those out there who are probably still celebrating and now will for the next 364 consecutive days. But with that being said, you guys, I got a very special guest for you guys here today. I've been following him for a long time. He's probably up there in one of my favorite follows on social media because of the content that he puts out there. Some of those live videos, it's harrowing at times to see what the driver community goes through and experiences and everything else. So with that being said, we're going to talk about some risk and compliance today with Mr. Rob Carpenter. Rob, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah. How you doing?
Dude, I'm doing well, man. And I'm not lying when I say this. Like, every time I see you pop up on my feed, I'm like, it's going to be another good one, right? Like, some of the stuff that you put out there, like the one you put out this morning with that hot shot that, and it flew into that lot next to on the road. I'm just like, holy shit, man. Like, this is insane. And that was like one of them, unfortunately, one of the more tame ones that you've posted out there.
Yeah, it's really good or really bad, right? Depending on perspective. But yeah, that was fire, man. It came out over the weekend, and I was like, that's going to be a really good video for Monday. And the funny thing about it is, I think one of the things with tech is you now have such a huge, broad visibility of what's happening on the highways, whether it's photo or video. Yeah. And some days it's like you get so much content, you can never put it all out there. Yeah. So I'd say I only put out maybe 5% of what I actually collect.
Dude, it's wild, to see some of that. Because, I have some buddies on the trucking, the asset side of things. And, they've sent me some of their dash cam stuff. And, dude, it's nuts, right? And that's why I always tell, because like all of my experience in the industry is as a broker, right? Like, my dad drove, I've rode in trucks the overwhelming majority of my life. And I always tell brokers, I'm like, you guys need to get out there and see what these guys go through every single day. It's not as, pick here and deliver there. There's a lot of stuff that comes through. Bad driving is just one component of it, right? Like, that's a small percentage of what a lot of these guys are going through behind the wheel every single day.
Yep. And I think it kind of goes both ways with that. Like, it's bad on the road. It can be. I mean, it's good and it's bad. Some days I'm in the office and it's like, man, I just wish I could go back to driving a truck today. And then other days I drive truck and it's like, man, I just wish I could get out of this truck and be back in the office today. And that's one of the good things about how I work is some days I'm in the office. If I want to go drive a truck, whether it's a new truck from the factory or I've got a client that wants me to drive a truck just to kind of get some perspective of what's happening at the front line, I can kind of jump back and forth between the two. But one thing that I don't have modern day perspective on is back into the broker seat. So I think it goes both ways. I think carriers sometimes have to consider the broker side too.
No, I think that's what we're at a pretty unique point in time, man, where I think that there's that ability to have that, right? Like I try my best to get out there in front of the driver community as much as I possibly can to get them to come on the show and speak so they can kind of hear it from that perspective. I just had my good friend Honest on last week. I mean, he's got a 100 truck fleet out of Colorado, and he says the same thing. He's like, man, I want to ask you questions as well, because he's like, I want to work better with brokers. I want to have a better understanding about what brokers go through, day to day, to see how they can perform better as well. And I think like now we're at that ability to really bring that forward and really have a better understanding, because at the end of the day, like I don't want to talk about any of the minority of the industry that is like just the shitbag bad providers, right? Because the overwhelming majority of people that I've come across, and again, I jokingly say I've only moved 3 truckloads in my career, are good salts of the earth people that just want to work hard and provide for their families. They just don't want to be ranked through the mud, just like nobody wants to in any situation that they're in.
That's it.
So, dude, we kind of skipped a little bit here, man. What's crazy is this is the first time we've ever talked. But how'd you get your start in freight, Rob? Like what brought you into the industry?
So growing up, I grew up on a farm, and obviously on a farm, there's not a lot of freight per se, but we had a farm in Gloucester, Virginia, where we would kind of raise cattle, raise hogs, and then we would kind of relocate it to our other farm in York County, Virginia, which is where we had a meat plant. And then we kind of grew crop and stuff like that. So you're constantly around diesel machines, moving something from one place to the other, combines, etc. So there's freight, just not for commerce, I guess. So that kind of started it for me. And then when I got older, I went back to trucking, started driving trucks, got my CDL 20-ish plus years ago, and drove trucks, but it wasn't under the premise of, hey, I want to be a truck driver forever. The goal was ultimately to own a fleet. And I got there. It was just, I wanted to have all of my bases covered for freight, because there's so much that goes on in the freight realm, whether you're a carrier or a broker, that you really, to me, I think to be really good at it, you have to understand the perspective of all of it. So started as a driver, became a broker to understand the broker side and to learn the kind of the business side of it. Went into running companies, bought one of those, sold it, and then went into PE management as an enterprise executive. So that's kind of how it happened. And how I got into compliance was I historically had been outlaw truck guy, and tearing out loose leaf pages in my binder and giving out 5 log books to my drivers. And then I got hit by a truck, and then pretty much, I don't know, 20% of me is metal at this point. So you realize at that point, maybe compliance is important. And really that had to happen for me, because otherwise it was, bell drops, trying to stay awake for 46 hours to run the Hunts Point by 2 a.m. or whatever the case was. So
is that, so going through a lot of that, is that why you started posting a lot of those videos out there, man? Is this to show, like, maybe it is to kind of show the driver community, like, hey guys, it's not worth it, because like, again, man, my dad drove 70s, 80s, and the 90s, right? Yeah. Like there was not a logbook, air quotes. My dad since passed away, so I'll keep it real. Nobody's coming after him, but like, there's no logbooks back then, man. He used to literally leave our house on Sunday, and we grew up in northern Wisconsin, and he would drive nonstop to the Bronx every single week for 35 straight years. And he would deliver in the Bronx first thing Monday morning, get reloaded, come back. And he would do that. And it was not a lot of sleep associated with that. But now with, all of the, e-logs and everything else that's out there that's designed to make the roads safer, I guess kind of tying it all in, was that one of the main reasons why you started posting some of those videos? Like, hey guys, there is a repercussion for some of these decisions that you make.
Part of it was my experience, and there's things I can't do now that I could do before. I used to be a fullback when I played football, and I can't run anymore. I don't have any more space between the discs. I can't take impact. So there's so many different things that I can't do that in ways that this has affected me by being unsafe. And historically, I mean, growing up on a farm, we didn't have machine guards and things like that. If anything, we would take the machine guard off to make it more efficient. less safe, but more efficient. But there was that aspect of it, but then there was the other aspect of it. Like, we now have visibility of everything that's happening on the roads. That, like, the people we share the road with, whether that's truck driver or four wheeler, we're all sharing the road and seeing some of the catastrophic basically consequences of what's happened, whether it's from the risk control perspective or owning a fleet and seeing some crashes, accident reconstruction. But, seeing some of the expert cases I've done, almost all of them have been fatality.
Yeah.
So you see some of this and it's like, if you highlight it and at the end of the day, somebody on their way home says, hey, you know what? I remember that post from Rob Carpenter that said, I should look left, right, left before I go into this intersection.
Mm-hmm.
You might have changed something for somebody. So that's really kind of what drove it. So
I look at a lot of the situations now because obviously my old man taught me how to drive, and dude, and I even catch myself doing this today. Like when I'm coming up through a green light, I'm still checking intersections every single time because I know more than likely, people aren't paying attention. And if I have an extra second to react and slam on my brakes, I'd rather have somebody rear end me than me hit and kill somebody, whether it be my fault or not. And, and do you think that there needs to be more of an emphasis on that in like the training? Do you think like CDL trainings become almost too expedited to where it's like, hey, I don't know how long the course is. I'm just hypothetically 4 weeks, all of a sudden you're a truck driver.
Well, yeah. And I think part of the issue is, with it, everybody says, well, now we have entry-level driver training. Yeah, that was great. It was a great move forward. And it's kind of like Truck Parking Club. It like promotes awareness, but doesn't necessarily solve all the issue, right? But it does drive awareness. And ELDT was a good first step. But I think one of the problems that you'll find with ELDT is you ask for a breakdown of the requirement of how long they must spend in training. And there isn't one.
Yeah.
It tells you what you have to be trained in, but doesn't tell you have to have 120 hours. It just says it has to meet the state requirement. And that varies drastically across the spectrum. So in Virginia, where I'm licensed to teach commercial and teen driving to get you your license, you have to have like 120 hours. So there is a set time there, but there's not a federal time. So if you go to a state where you've got an 8-hour minimum, like people are literally going to school for 8 hours, jamming out like a 20 module curriculum. Yeah. And then next thing you know, they're behind the wheel. So that's part of it.
Yeah. I'm like, I look at it as, and I tried explaining this back when they were like, should we lower the age of CDL drivers to 18 and how, then I wanted to, I was talking about on the show and I was like, you guys in most states, you can get a CDL at 18. You just can't cross state lines. That's really the basis of it. But I looked at it as like, how do we model this as more of like an apprenticeship, right? Like, and a lot of the other trades that are out there, I had, some work done on my house. The kid who came in, I say kid because he was like 20 and I'm 40 now. So I guess I've graduated to that. But, this kid came in, he's like, oh man, he's like, I'm just an apprentice. I come in, I set the job up for the plumber to come in and do it. And then I tear it down and I sit there and I work next to him throughout the time. And it's just on the job training. And that, that was like probably 3 years ago that happened. And that's when the whole, should we lower the age of CDLs to 18? And I was like, man, how cool would that be to where they get to do that? And maybe it's, once a month they get to go, and do 1,000-mile turn or something like that, where we can graduate them up. And then they get multiple hours behind the wheel and, and get that experience because like, no matter what. And I look at it as whether you're a freight broker or you're loading trucks on the docks or whatever, classroom training is great in a controlled environment, but that does not pale in comparison to real on-the-job experience. And I think the more controlled environment that we can get, I think like, I don't know if this is the answer to safety or anything like that. You might have some data behind that, but I know that my dad driving for as long as he did, and I know a lot of the other drivers who've been driving for as long as they have, they've forgotten more about trucking than most people are even taught now. And it's like, that seems like a controllable aspect of things that we could utilize and implement to improve it.
Well, I think there's like, I would say 20% of what I learned in school. Like 80% of what I learned, it was hard knocks. It was on the road experience. And there's things you're not going to learn until you get there. Like, there was a time where when I started pulling doubles, right? You go into a truck stop, you're pulling doubles, you're trying to park for the night, and you got this one spot, right? hard to back up there. You don't want to risk that. So you want to pull through. And you're pulling through, but if you don't go far enough up, you're now like 10 feet longer than you would have been if you were pulling a 53 footer. So you have to subconsciously think about all different types of things that you just normally wouldn't think about. And a lot of times you won't think about them until you experience the wrath of not thinking about it. But I think a lot of it goes down to even going beyond the CDL element, right?
Mhm.
Going to the teen element when you actually learn the fundamentals of driving. And people, I think, miss this part because they're so focused on, well, they're now 23 or 24 and they're coming to school out of the military or whatever to be a truck driver. But at the end of the day, you're still functioning on the fundamentals for how you were trained to operate on the road, whether it was 4 wheels or 18 wheels. And one of the things I've noticed as a teen driving instructor in Virginia, I don't do it often because I don't have the patience for the teen thing. But when I do it, I've noticed a couple of different things. They get in the car and they don't even know how to adjust the mirrors. So totally different element. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we were dying to get our license as men. And we were like, hey, I'm ready to get a job. I want to get my license. I want to go on dates. In this world, it's very different. It's totally switched up. I found in Virginia anyway, teenage girls are now the ones that are like, I got to get out. I got to go get a job. I got to make a life for myself. And it's the boys that get in the car and it's like, my mom's making me get my license. It took me away from my game. I got to get a job.
Wow.
And it's totally different. And these people are spending time with their parents. In Virginia, it's supposed to be 40 hours with your parents before you ever get in a car with me.
Yeah.
Some of these kids get in the car and they can't even adjust the mirror. They don't know how to adjust the seat. They don't know how to put it in gear. So a lot of it's starting there. And then you're going to put them into an ELDT training program commercially where they do have range on the road, classroom content, but it's so much more that you're going to have to learn with someone else. That's just like when you were a teen. You're going to have to get in there with somebody that's experienced, and you're going to have to get the experience of figuring it out. Or someone's going to have to tell you, don't do that because you need to go up 10 more feet before you make this left. So
with a lot of this stuff that you've kind of broken down, maybe it's, from a risk perspective here, a lot of the videos that you posted, has there been an underlying kind of thing that keeps popping up maybe more times than not? I know each individual case is unique in its own right, but is it a lack of training that comes up? Is it, distracted driving? What has there been anything that's kind of identified itself?
I think for me, like, this is just Rob. I don't think there may be some data tied to it somewhere, but I think for me, it's always been like, what happened to people's situational awareness and why haven't they developed it? If I go into a restaurant and I'm sitting my back against the wall, I'm doing that for a reason. Like, I want to know what's in front of me and what's coming in the door, right? Like, no matter where I am, I know what's going on around me. If I pass a car, I can 10 feet down the road say, hey, what happened to that black Honda with XBX 10099 license plate? It's not there anymore. Is it in my blind spot? There's so much situational awareness that lacks. Even in the grocery store, you go into a Costco on a Saturday, and I guarantee you someone's going to run into you 5 different times. They have no idea you exist. And that's no different when they get on the highway. If you think it's bad in Costco, wait till they get on the road. It's like they don't care. They don't know that you're there. They don't understand space management.
Rob, I know we literally just started talking a couple of minutes ago. We're cut from the same cloth, bro. Like my wife gets so upset with me because I'm like, babe, I idle at 75. And if you don't fucking like just pay attention in a store, like it's very basic to the roadway, right? Stay on that. And if you're gonna stop pulling to one of the side aisles, don't impede. Oh God, dude. Now I'm getting pissed off just hearing you.
Oh, it is, dude. I was just there this past weekend, and it's like you're going down, you're on the right. I spend a lot of time in the UK, so like they drive on the wrong side of the road. But you see these people, and it's like, are you from the UK? Because this is America, and going this direction, we should be on the right side. But then it's the total like lack of awareness of everything that's going on around you, where they'll stop like in the most inconvenient spots.
Yeah.
And then they'll meet like 5 of their friends, and then 5 more friends will come. And it's like nothing hits them that says, maybe we should move over here to the dead aisle that no one's on to have our congregation. But it's things like that it makes your mind wonder, like, what happened to situational awareness? So I know it's not just me, but that's my take on it.
I gotcha. So how do we fix that though, man? Because I kind of also feel like at the end of the day, I know it's not our job to raise everybody's kids, but I also feel like there's a lot of power in leading by example and leading from the front. What, as an industry, maybe this is just too broad of a question. How do we fix this, right? Because like I'm of the mindset that if we want to get people excited about freight, that next generation, we got to be the ones to get it done, right?
Yeah.
So what are you like? What's step one? How do we get that? Is it the forward-facing cameras? Maybe they're a little bit more required than we think to improve a lot of that, because if there's a set of eyes on you, and it is kind of maybe taking that tough love approach, right? Maybe these kids have never been told that you shouldn't be doing that, and maybe that's where we start.
Well, I pitch a lot of the dual facing dash cams, and I get some grief for it. Like, you used to be a truck driver. Why are you pushing this on us? And we don't want it. But at the end of the day, like, even me, so I can bring up motive right now, and you can watch my motive and my behavior while driving my vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things that I might get in a rush that I don't pay attention to what exactly my spatial awareness is at that point. And a lot of times that motive kicking that off for me, it's like, I'd like to think I'm better than 80% of the drivers out there. And that's what most people in America, that's a statistic. Most people in America think they're better than 80% of the other drivers on the road. But yet we still have these astronomical crash figures. And what I found is I can watch these videos and say, hey, you know what? I could have been safer right there. I could have done something different. I could have actually looked far enough ahead instead of been thinking about what I'm going to get for dinner tonight, and actually said, you know what, maybe I should move over now rather than until I'm right on their bumper.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is that visibility you get from something watching you all the time, and it says, hey, this is how you could have done better. So, and maybe it's not motive. A lot of people ask me about that, and it's like, well, you talk about motive all the time. But when I go into a business and I consult with a business on these things, there's never a cookie cutter answer. Maybe it's not motive. Maybe it ends up being Netrodyne or Garmin or Nexar. It just depends on your business and what your needs are. But I think at the root element, you need something to be able to monitor your behavior, give you some visibility of your fleet so that you can coach people, even people like me who've driven for, 30 years. So, and teach people how to drive. So it's, I think it's one of those things that's needed, because you can't change anything if you don't have awareness of what's happening. So that's a huge part of it.
I think that, in maybe my mindset's a little bit different on this stuff now, now that I'm a little bit older, cause like, I want to know where I can get better, like that's kind of my whole thing, and this is, as a business owner, I'm constantly like, how do we improve? How do we get better? How do we shorten the sales cycle out here? How do I say something? Maybe it's a little bit different to trip somebody's interest in what we're doing. And, again, how do I become more efficient with my time? Because time is the only valuable asset that we actually have. And, again, and I know like the ego is probably the biggest hurdle to overcome with a lot of individuals who've been doing it for 10 years. I'm sure, hell, I probably have that exact same thing. I'm sure if somebody came in and talked to me, they'd be like, oh, his ego's too big. He doesn't want to hear anything. But at the end of the day, we need to be looking at where can we get better? From a training perspective. I think that's one thing. And this isn't even just a transportation thing. I think this is like in most professional careers, that continual training just goes away, right? I feel like it's like, hey, here's your 2-week classroom, and then that's it. And I know this isn't everywhere, and it's a very broad statement to make, but I feel like training kind of stops at a certain point. And, I look at it like how maybe it's like a quarterly thing or a biannual, whatever that looks like. Maybe there's some simulator training that some of these drivers can get in and, and do some situational stuff to kind of help improve the motor skills. I mean, I look at it a lot, and I know there's a lot of differences between flying airplanes and driving trucks, but those pilots are out there constantly certified. There's checklists that they need to follow, and there's a reason why it's the safest mode of transportation that goes on out there. And, I look at it like that. They go into simulator training. Maybe that's something that we can do as an industry where, some of these larger fleets where it's like, hey, 1 week, a quarter, you come in, you do simulator training.
Well, it's, you bring up pilot. I'm looking to get my pilot's license, and you've got ground school, and then you've got 40 hours for a basic pilot license. It's not a lot of time, but I think one of the big pieces is practice. So you've got lawyers that practice law, right? We are drivers who practice delivering freight and driving vehicles. And I think the more that you practice what's right, the better you're going to get, right? But that starts with actually practicing it the right way. So if you were taught it the wrong way, or you learned something the wrong way, and you're now in that habitual behavior of doing it the wrong way, you're continuously practicing. You're just practicing it the wrong way.
Mhm.
So you're getting better at doing it the wrong way. So the only way that's going to change is for somebody else to actually see you doing that behavior. We've got visibility through the camera, and then someone says, "Hey, this is where you're failing. You don't have an issue with distracted driving. You don't have an issue with speeding. You have an issue with close following." And how we know that is because you're hard braking all the time. And when we look at your hard brakes, we realize that you don't really have a hard braking issue. You have a hard braking issue because you have a close following issue. You have an issue with spatial awareness, and your habit is to rubberneck everybody. So now let's change that behavior to where you're practicing doing this the right way. And we're going to coach you until we realize that you're not coachable. And really that's the only way you're going to change behavior.
You know, I look at it now, Rob, as well, is every trucking company has a giant target on their back right now, because if they're involved in any accident at all, whether they're at fault or not. And I mean, I keep bringing up that this is probably the 15th time that I've mentioned this on this show, the Warner case in Texas.
Yeah.
That is the epitome of you are essentially guilty until proven innocent. And then even if you are innocent, you're still fucking at fault. And that would just Google Warner Enterprises and the state of Texas, and that will show up, you guys. And it is disgusting what happened. I hate that people got injured in that instance, but if I was driving and going eastbound and a car that was traveling westbound crossed the median and hit me head on,
And
how is that my fucking fault?
Yeah, and then sued you for what they did.
Yeah.
But it really boils down in those cases to the litigious society that we're in. And it goes to another reason why you need to have cameras. It's not just about training drivers and changing habitual behaviors. It's about indemnifying your fleet and indemnifying your driver. And in this case, I don't know that it would have helped either way. And I know Werner has cameras, but the issue in that case was having somebody who understands policy and well-written policy. It's not just enough to have a good example is certificate of insurance. I wrote an article the other day on don't judge a carrier by their COI, because what happens is you've got this document that says we have this amount of coverage, right? So you think we're good. Well, that truck is hauling your freight, gets in a crash, and then the language becomes very important in the actual insurance policy, because if the limits are not enough, or if there's exemptions under the policy, yes, you might be covered to this amount, but see, there's this limitation in the language. So language is important, whether it's policy or COI or anything. So just kind of getting that blanket piece of, yes, we're covered, or yes, we're compliant. Being compliant doesn't mean that you're defensible.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot. I have my good friend Cam Pesci on the show. He does truck insurance as well. We talk about exclusion lists all the time. We talk about the verbiage on COIs and everything, because not all $100,000 in cargo is created equally at the end of the day, you guys. And you need to know that, right? And that's why, again, sometimes just a little quick phone call to, some of these insurance companies, verifying a lot of this information on, getting it in writing, doing whatever you have to do, because like at the end of the day, no matter what, whether you're a trucking company or a broker, if it's your name on the side of the building, you are fucking liable at the end of the day. And just like, I hate to break it to you, insurance companies and lawyers hope you had a bad day and didn't do your job in that moment, because they're looking to not pay you or pay for you in those moments.
Yep. And it matters what insurance company you pick. So
yeah. Oh man, Rob, I appreciate your time, man. This flew by. And you guys follow Rob Carpenter. All right. I follow him. He's one of my top follows on LinkedIn. And how can he reach out to you to find out more though, man? Because you're one of those guys that I just know that actually gives a shit about the industry after just this brief conversation that we've had today.
Well, most of the followers I have are on LinkedIn. If you message me on LinkedIn, I'm going to respond, and it's going to be me. I don't have anybody managing it for me. So what you see is what you get. And so if you want to reach out there, you can reach out there, or TruckSafe or Epic Insurance, and you can find me pretty much everywhere.
Perfect. And if for some odd reason you guys can't find Rob Carpenter on LinkedIn, hit me up. I'll gladly put you guys in contact with him. He puts out a ton of valuable content. And brokers, you need to follow this as well, because a lot of the stuff that he posts, that could be your customers' freight on the trucks that he posts out there, you guys. And again, we got to get better as an industry, and he's one of those ones that you guys should be in contact with. But that's going to be it for today, you guys. We'll be back tomorrow. We got more guests coming on this week. As always, if you guys got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.